In this episode of the Exploring Information Security podcast, how to hack an enterprise.
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I'm your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we'll be exploring how to hack an enterprise. With me to do that is Jonathan Singer, the man, the myth, the legend from GuidePoint Security. You can send feedback to the show at timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. You can also reach out on LinkedIn if you want to connect. Just say you're a listener of the podcast and we'll connect. And then you can rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. So this was one that kind of started with John and his idea for stuff. Wanted to kind of make this live, but we ended up just going ahead and recording this. Live is something I'd love to do just to get some more interaction from the crowd. But at this point, just based on time and everything and the effort that goes into making something live, it can be a bit more of a struggle. So not live at this point, but maybe sometime in the future. John's great. I've known him for a few years now. Always great to talk to, really dive into a lot of the different stuff. And this was just kind of an idea he had that he really wanted to explore. And we kind of get into a little bit of everything with this. So it's just a really great conversation on how to hack an enterprise. So with that, we'll get right into it.
Then I'm ready when you are.
Yeah, I mean, what do you want to talk about?
So all right. So I bring this interesting topic. This kind of concept that's kind of stuck with me for the past couple months since you first reached out about, hey, do you want to talk about anything that you're passionate about on the show? And I'm super passionate about the concept of us, somebody who's like, not necessarily, it could be in a CISO role, but the idea is somebody who's in security management, that your life has grown way beyond the old school way of thinking of security, of like the firewall. It's so much more than that today, into kind of these two verticals I consider, like the stuff you're in control of and the stuff that you're not in control of. But basically, right, what I was saying is cybersecurity is so much more than just the firewall these days, or just what's considered like conceptual security of things you would think people are responsible for. And in a leadership role, so much more is being put on your plate in like you said, things you can control and things that are simply out of your control, right? And so I always like to say, okay, things you can control, right? Yes, the firewall. That's a great example of something you can control, right? Cloud security, application security, right? Are my coders well trained on the OWASP top 10? Do I have a good EDR tool deployed to my systems and my hosts to not just thwart attackers, but capture that rich data? And so, but yeah, it's so much more than that today. You have to do good at those things, right? You can't get away.
Well, and I think you know where you're going is that, like, you kind of have to prioritize, because there is so much more nowadays than there was way back when, right?
I think it's more. I wish prioritization was even like a possibility in some cases. Sometimes it feels like you're like that. What is it? Like instead of like a Medusa with a bunch of snake heads, you have that, but for arms, like an Indian deity, of many arms, and you're like flipping all these buttons at the same time, not just two, and so that's kind of the basis of like my thought process, right? And so I usually like to stage it more as like an experiential example. And what I mean by that is, like, let's take a very large company. And I do want to preface that, like, by no means am I endorsing, nor am I speaking poorly of any particular business or entity that I bring up. It's just the example that they have significantly more challenges to address than most businesses these days, right? And so I call this the McDonald's theory.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
With that in mind, like, right? So like, okay, ready? Tim, what's like, give me an attack vector that you would take down an enterprise like McDonald's. And again, we're theorizing here.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, you've got stuff internal, like, and you've got, how many shops, or not shops, how many restaurants do they have? They got like millions of restaurants, like worldwide, right?
Billions of happy customers served, and I don't think it's millions, but many thousands. But like, the idea is that, okay, like, first things, right? McDonald's offers, like, they have free Wi-Fi. Okay, so that means there's an access point every single restaurant.
Don't they? Yeah, don't they put them in like the tables too, or that they were at one point?
But like, boom, there's an attack vector. We saw that years ago with a big retail chain where hacking the Wi-Fi from the parking lot got you access to the cash register.
Did it really? I hadn't heard that one.
This was many years ago. Is the Best Buy story.
That's
but
cool.
Yeah, you'd have to look that one up. And
I do.
So like, okay, maybe a lot of businesses today have some kind of Wi-Fi, maybe at their office, maybe they have an internal Wi-Fi for employees, and they have a guest Wi-Fi for the general public. But it creates an attack vector, a security, a point of failure or breach. Okay, great. So that's on the table. Next, they now use kiosks. Right? Self-service kiosks. We're seeing this proliferation of self-service kiosks in every retail chain. My local supermarket just removed a bunch of checkout registers and put in self-service kiosks. It's a computer at the end of the day. And they have USB ports. They oftentimes run some flavor of Windows. And so there's a new attack vector. And then we can just keep going, right? Again, we're still talking about hardware, things that you can control. McDonald's has an app. That means it has developers, or it relies on a third party to develop this app. This app most likely is separated between a front end and an API. So now we have hosted applications that are public-facing APIs, and then we have device-level applications across Android, iOS, and a number of other things. Including, maybe like a web app for your desktop or laptop. And so, okay, we now have another attack vector. Again, we're still focused on what is considered classical security. Again, these are things you control. These are things you make decisions on. Hopefully you're making good decisions on. But then we start getting more interesting, right? And the list can go on and on. Almost all businesses kind of have some of the things that we've talked about. They have Wi-Fi, they have apps and APIs. They have, they have a public-facing website and things of that nature. They probably have some kind of third-party integrations with suppliers and fun stuff like that. But then you really start to get into some of the bigger challenges of hacking an organization like McDonald's that you can't, I would say, like, buy a thing for. Right. And it gets more painful the bigger you are, if you're publicly traded, stuff like that. Everybody's favorite social engineering. And I'm not talking like sending an email phishing chain, which, again, there's another way to hack a company. Right. But many organizations, like the bigger, at least the big ones, right? It's classic. UPS, FedEx, just go to freaking Goodwill, eBay. Buy a shirt. Well, it just so happens that companies like McDonald's also have their outfits available. And we're starting to get into that whole, well, if you can't hack a computer, then steal it thing, or enter a retail chain, a facility somewhere, some way, somehow. And you can't like theoretically stop a person from walking into one of your restaurant chains. And having them impersonate an employee. Maybe at headquarters, you can try to prevent badge spoofing or some kind of tailing at a door through good physical security. But now,
But even like KnowBefore's thing, right? Like they hired someone. How do they not know they don't have North Koreans in their environment already, right?
yeah, or look at the XZ thing, right? Somebody who persisted for years pressuring open source developers to participate in their code commits. And now you're thinking with your noodle. We're talking really getting into these things. But at the end of the day, the physical security of those systems, the lockdown of those systems, the training of badge awareness, asking, a lot of that is still falling under cybersecurity in some small fashion, some way, right? You again, not to talk about KnowBefore, but the opposite side is their entire business is how do you make people better at understanding security events when they're happening in real time, and training around that. And so now we're starting to get into the more interesting aspects of stuff. I've seen an entire new, I guess we'll call it like genre of security sales and marketing around brand, right? Brand is huge these days. It's one thing for somebody to be like, oh, hey, I'm selling creds for a company on the dark web on Tor. But it's more when you're starting to see how that suddenly turns into a news article, right? We're in crisis mode, where there was a story a couple years ago where somebody wrote a article to PR Newswire, and they basically said they've made a fake Walmart domain and wrote a whole PR stunt on how Walmart was now accepting Litecoin for payments. All right, we're getting into crypto already, but what happened is immediately the price of Litecoin skyrocketed. So this is a pump and dump scheme. And then Walmart, it took almost an hour for them to reply and say, like, no, we're not. Like, that's fake. Who told you this? And then it dumped. So your reputation can easily be put on the line by some party somewhere outside of your organization. There's, again, nothing that you can control. We're seeing this in publicly traded companies. We're seeing this in brand. We're seeing this in a number of different things. And so how would I try to compromise, these large organizations? Through where it hurts them the most, through their wallet. It just gets really amazing. If anybody listening has their CISSP, right? You have your CISSP? Yeah.
I do not. I asked. So I've asked my leadership before. I was like, "Do I need to go get this?" And they're like, "No, you're fine."
Yeah, I don't have it either, but I've read quite a bit of like the study guide and stuff. There was a time in the day where I was going to get one.
Yeah, I too. Let me see if I have. No, it's not on the shelf. But yeah, I bought the whole book with the intent of getting it, and I just never. You know what I did? I started a podcast. I feel like this is my CISSP.
this is way better. Because now you're giving CISSPs instead.
There you go.
Or you're giving CPEs. Like,
yeah.
But one of the things on there, like, that I'll never forget was how it talks about the proximity of things like sidewalks and public access to facilities. And I've always found that to be like really interesting of, okay, well, why would somebody who holds a CISSP in a security role give a crap about things that are out of their control, that are like, but then it comes down to like, okay, well, if a sidewalk is near a window, then you can read things on people's screens. Or if high value commodities or or goods are near a window, then they could be potentially stolen with smash and grab, or things like that. And then then that puts it in perspective. There's it just reminds me of those. Remember those old like CRT attacks where you could clone what was on somebody's CRT using radio waves?
Yep.
Like that kind of thing. Like it.
Mm-hmm.
The modern version of that is like the Microsoft keyboard wireless attacks and Bluetooth attacks to intercept those devices, so you can see what people are typing, or when they're not at their workstation, you can type things on their behalf, and cool stuff like that. And so then it starts to just get into like really crazy out there. But when you're threat modeling your business, I want to harp on it. It goes so much farther than the things that you can control, right? And I think about this stuff all the time. Like, I always tell people, like, oh man, I want to be a hacker. I'm like, well, stop for a second and tell me how many cameras are looking at us.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Wherever we're standing. Well, the answer is 3. And if you didn't have that answer, like, we can work on this.
Well, yeah, it's the same thing too. Like when I walk into a room, I always think about what's my exit strategy, or like you're talking about, right? Like, oh, I see this. How would I hack this? How would I attack this? That's like a constant mindset. I walk into like a building or a room or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's becoming an ever-growing challenge for businesses, for security leadership, to feel like they have a grasp on things. One of my other kind of like favorite like reasons is like, okay, so we decided to roll out this new IoT device at all of our stores because the customers are going to love it. And it's like, well, are we putting it on the internet? Well, yeah, it's an Internet of Things device. Of course, we're putting it on the network. Well, did anybody approve this? Well, the customers are going to love it. So
I've had this conversation. I've had this conversation before.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're saying it's in production?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's already bought and paid for, and it's deployed.
And it's up and running. Like, well, we have corporate policy against this, don't we? Like, well,
and here's the other thing. I've even had cases where we found out about it, we tested it, we go, we should not have this in our environment, and you know what? We were overruled.
So security says there's something about this I don't feel very confident, and according to our research and findings, it probably requires a little bit more vetting and time before we get to this point. I'm saying that in a very political nature because that's probably the way it's being conveyed the first time. The second time is something along the lines of WTF.
Yes. Yep.
And then next thing you know, it's out there. There's an old story of a buddy of mine who was contracted to hack into these key carving kiosks at a large store.
Oh yeah, I've seen those at Home Depot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, luckily it's not Home Depot, but we can use them as an example. But yeah, it's a self-service thing. It takes payment. It is a computer at the end of the day with a touch screen and a number of other things. It is on Wi-Fi. It's on somebody's Wi-Fi. Or it's potentially cellular, like a standalone ATM. And it's like, wait. So these things are already out in the public for use. And now we're going to send a physical security engineer to go pen test it. Again, like, yeah, it's dollars and cents over what security says. It's very interesting. It's very, very, very crazy. And like, I mean, obviously, like any security engineer is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. And then like, as you get older, you're like, oh my gosh, as a business owner, I need to get this rolling ASAP. Mm-hmm. Like, why is it not out there making money? This is a great idea. I love it. What's it going to take to go? There's also like that we've talked about stuff like shadow IT, right? Mm-hmm. It takes too long for me to get provisioned. I'm just going to go open it myself.
Yep.
This SaaS tool is really helpful to our business. I've gone ahead and subscribed us for a model using my credit card and I expensed it. Who else wants an account? You know,
No
totally.
MFA either, by the way. They're not going to put on MFA because that just gets in the way.
Well, don't even get me started on shaming those that charge extra for single sign-on and MFA. I'll tell you, one of my favorite websites. You ever been on sso.tax? Okay, so for everybody listening, SSO, single sign-on, .tax, like tax season, April 15th, is a website dedicated to shaming businesses and SaaS operators who charge extra to integrate security features for your organization. Right? Like this is literally the reason we have identity governance as an entire vertical in identity access management these days. Like IGA is now important because you have disparate tools with identities that are not part of your directory. So like if you fire somebody, you don't just disable their account in one place. You got to like remember all of the other places you created an account for them, and you have to go in and manually fix that. I imagine you're looking at this list right now and you're thinking,
I am. I pulled it up, man.
I hate all of these people.
Coursera is about 50,000 per year for SSO.
Yeah.
Holy jeez. There's some names on here that you recognize. I think this goes back to I wonder if these companies are copying Microsoft, because Microsoft this is their model. They're going to turn security into a profit center, right? Because despite like you have to pay extra for certain logs, you have to pay extra to turn on this feature or that feature that's going to add some security to your environment. And so I'm wondering if this is kind of the same thing, or people are kind of copying that.
Security is a feature, or no longer a feature now. It's an add-on.
It's an add-on.
It's a
microtransaction.
Oh, don't even. Whatever. I mean, in that sense, it is, at least for these people. And so I'm actually looking this up. But there, for those that attended DEF CON and Black Hat this year, Jen Easterly, right, head of the CISA, director, Jen Easterly. So she gave like bugs a new name. Like we call it like a bug. And I'm trying to find her quote, but it kind of it kind of took me back for a second. But the idea is that these vulnerabilities are mistakes. And
well, this I like that. Whatever she said, maybe I should help you look for it. I've started saying, and this has been a couple of years now. The security people to me are just hall monitors, and it's a lot of like along that same line, right? Like we're just calling out problems or people doing things that they shouldn't do because bad things can happen. And so I think it falls in line a lot with that idea of it's not bugs, it's not vulnerabilities, it's just misconfiguration, right? That's a big one nowadays, and it's becoming more prevalent.
Absolutely. It's right there in OWASP top 10 for a reason.
Right.
It's funny you say hall monitors, right? So here's like the hot take is, do you feel like hall monitors can be automated with AI then?
Potentially. It could be. Depends. I don't think we're at that point yet, because one thing I think AI, hashtag machine learning, hashtag been around for a while, hashtag script, hashtag decision tree, is that there's context, right? There's context there. And so, calling out certain things, it's taking into account like what we kind of been talking on and touching on is what's the actual risk, there, right?
Mhm.
Is what's actually there, and is it an issue? Or, going back to your McDonald's retail, is a vulnerability where someone can check out a coupon multiple times that's supposed to be one use a vulnerability, or is that a logic flaw?
I mean, in my opinion, that's a logic flaw, but that's
I
still
agree. Yeah.
considered a
It's a problem.
Okay, so it's a vulnerability of the inherent larger system, right?
Yeah.
Vulnerability just implies that there is a problem somewhere, somehow. So the vulnerability could be in code, or the vulnerability could be in process and procedure. The vulnerability could be in an individual clicking a link. And so it's, weakest chain or weakest link is the one that you click. And so yeah, it's a vulnerability in a sense, but it's not like a classic definition of a software vulnerability. It's
Right.
I mean,
You're not getting access to the system. You're just taking advantage of the system.
yeah. Also, coming from like the OWASP world, right? We're happily living in a day and age where so many languages now have security functionality built in that we're not running in. I mean, they still exist. Cross-site scripting, SQL injection, classical stuff still is totally around. And we just saw this week the IPv6 overflow, well, in this case, underflow bug that is an RCE, right? And so things that were here for decades are still here. But luckily, languages allow us to, certain frameworks that are allowing us to improve security, so much that majority of the bugs, I'd say, we're seeing in new, well-written stuff is logic.
Well, and you said it right there. It's well written too, right? Because and that's why I go back to the hall monitors. Is we would not have a job in security if people actually coded, configured, set up things in the way they're supposed to be set up. Because if you go to these frameworks, it says, here's how you set this up. The problem comes in is when the developer goes to Stack Overflow and the first answer is, oh, we'll just turn off the security thing and you should be good to go. Right? That's the problem. That's that's the issue.
That and even so, back to that, my theory around security encompasses everything, even that you can't control. It's in software development, you do static analysis, you do dynamic analysis, you do infrastructure analysis, you can do it all. And something like a logic flaw will bite you at the end of the day.
You couldn't even find it in that stuff. That's where someone has to go in and actually find that.
Yeah, and you can do some automated QA, you can do some manual QA. That's even if you care to QA. Development cycles are so rapid and high paced these days that oftentimes testing in QA is literally just customers complaining in production.
Yeah, CrowdStrike.
Yeah. So while I didn't attend DEF CON this year, the president of CrowdStrike did, in good faith, accept his Pony Award for most epic fail.
Yeah.
And even
That's
gave
some self-awareness, right? I love that kind of self-awareness and some of that accepting of we kind of screwed up.
Yeah. It happens. But look, you know what? Okay, so take this into account. We have dev and prod for a reason. We probably have dev stage prod if we're really good at what we do. And we've always put Windows updates in dev stage prod because we learned 20 years ago that a Windows update can bring you a blue screen. Or a Windows update will break a piece of software that is critical to the business, or a Windows update will break a piece of hardware that's critical to the business. And so we've made this entire deployment, life cycle out of that fear that this can turn bad because the fact of the matter is that it does from time to time. So would you venture to say that EDR and other security agents for hosts have now joined the ranks of Microsoft Office as in the category of tools that also have to go through dev QA.
Yeah, I mean,
prod.
yeah, CrowdStrike, all they had to do is load this on some internal systems or just even deploy to their own environment first. And they would have seen, because it was so widespread and so immediate that like it kind of tells you that they did not have something they deployed this to before pushing it out. And I've been a part of this too in the past. I was at an organization where we had Kaspersky, and it hosed our machines because of a bad update. Now, we didn't blue screen, and they eventually rolled out an update patch, but again, it was just chaos. So like they did not follow standard, like you're talking about, dev QA prod best practices. They made a change and went for it.
I'm waiting to see what the full report is.
It's out. It's already out. Like they've had, now they may have had some other ones, but they have like a full report out on like the aftermath or the after action. So, and there's a lot of words in there, but it was pretty clear they did not call out that they are looking to institute some of that testing, which they should have had in the first place.
Okay, so it was updated as recently as, man, I've just been stuck in my head in the hidey hole like a ostrich in the ground.
Oh, you're good, yeah. It's only come out within the last week, so, and that's of this recording.
Okay, well that's good to hear. But
yeah, you're not too far behind.
I'm trying. I'm all security is an ever-changing.
Yes, like we're talking about. It's a lot of stuff to worry about, and you do more than. I mean, I know application security is like kind of something near and dear to your heart, but you do a lot more than just that.
Yeah, no, and anybody who happens to check out, shout out to the Tampa chapter of OWASP, holding down the fort out here. But no, I mean, like, I love this field. I love this industry. I love everything about it, and the challenges that it brings, and the incredible people that you get to meet. But yeah, it absolutely. You know me near and dear, right? One of my favorite things is stuff like physical security, and I'm not talking like lock picking, but I do love tool and them too. But circuit boards, right? Badges and all the other fun stuff, embedded
flippers.
Security. Yeah, actually, so I know this is only audio, but I actually found out that one of my Raspberry Pis decided to fry itself, which is a sad day, but luckily I'm actually going to attempt to fix the voltage on it myself. There's a tiny little chip.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I was circuit board, what is it, 2M? I was 2M certified in the Navy, which was like circuit board repair.
Was that can we start calling you radio?
Yeah, if you want, you can. Yeah, that's where I got a lot of my skills, was working as an electronics technician, and I went down the radio path.
Nice.
So it wasn't even IT. There was like one IT, but not anybody was going into it, or they weren't putting people in it. They wanted electronics technicians. So I had to deal with like all the stuff you're talking about, like radio waves, and learning how to work on learning how to troubleshoot a circuit board in itself. Like that was a big eye opener for me. But those troubleshooting concepts still applied to other parts, particularly within security and IT. Learning how to troubleshoot is a very useful thing in this field.
Yeah, huge shout out, respect to everybody in comms. So, but yeah, so here's the big question then, and the idea is today, should everything really fall under a CISO? Should they be stuck with some of that? A lot of that responsibility, or do you feel like certain aspects of it can be trusted to other parts of the organization, right? Can things happen correctly, or do you have to hold everything near and dear because it can go wrong really quickly?
Yeah, I think I've always thought of like someone explained it to me, because I was like, what's the difference between a CSO, a chief security officer, and a CISO?
That's a good one.
And what it was explained to me is that a SCO, or not SCO, CSO chief security officer, that's where the physical security part falls under. So a CISO should just have kind of the cybersecurity technology focus, and then there should be like a separate physical security thing. But often that's not the case. Like you're talking about, physical security falls under a CISO. So I think some of that's like a negotiation with the CISO and, you know, their leadership around what kind of responsibilities. Because to your point, yeah, physical security can have all, especially for someone like me in the healthcare space, there are different ramifications, right? As far as we do a lot of paper documents still within the healthcare space, you know, those things have to be locked up, records have to be kept, and they have to be kept up. And so when you're talking about walking into like a healthcare facility versus a McDonald's, it's an entirely different set of requirements. So you almost need like your own physical security focused person. But even still, I've worked at a healthcare organization where the physical security person rolled up through the CISO.
Yeah, I still, like, I even said it before to this day, like, if I can't hack a system, I'll just steal it.
And it's so easy to walk into these places and just act like you belong there, like you're talking about, like walking in. You can walk in with a UPS shirt or a FedEx shirt and just wander around.
Scrubs.
Yeah, or some scrubs. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, last time I was in a hospital, not that it was a wonderful experience for why I was there, but I do recall very clearly, like, the crash cart, right? I mean, that's what we call them in the data center, right? What do you call, what's the laptop cart, right? That they wheel around. What's the little doctor cart?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called.
Right. Well,
yeah.
For all the data center nerds out there, like when we call them crash carts, it was just, you know, monitor, keyboard, stuff like that. But anyways, exposed USB, like exposed USB host. Now, I'm not going to say what hospital I was in, but let's just say I needed to charge my cell phone, and that was just a really close by, convenient, unmonitored.
Did you plug it in? Did you plug it in?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
That's crazy.
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Dude, but that's also healthcare, because I'll tell you, I was at my own thing. I won't say the place, but they had one of those that they rolled around, and they have proximity badges. So someone came in, hit the proximity badge, unlocked the computer, and then walked out and left. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then walked out of the room, and they left me in this exam room with a cart with a laptop. Now it had my x-rays on it, but like I could have gone to like the OS. I could have poked around
somebody else's x-rays.
I could have looked at someone else's x-rays. This is, and I've run I've worked in healthcare now for 6+ years. And I can tell you, within the providers, like within the medical staff, like they just don't have time for security a lot of times, and they just will do what they got to do to get their job done. But it's rife for opportunity for a lot of people. Like, to your point, like if you walk in, you could even just get an appointment, right? And then just have like a USB stick that's going to drop something and just plug it into one of those machines, and then you have access to their network.
Dude, so since we're on the topic of healthcare and things that you can't control, I was recently at a doctor's appointment, and in my room, like in my patient room, while in between, you know, the nurse comes in, takes vitals, blah, 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 leaves, doctor, you wait 20 minutes for the doctor. There's this touch screen on the wall. Like, oh, what is this? Is it trying to give me ads for prescription medication? Not as far as I know. Give me 1 second here. Like, you know, you start doing the classical touchscreen, you know, corners, beep boops, logos, tip taps, and eventually I get to the point where I'm like on YouTube watching music videos, because I would rather do that than be pitched an ad for something to help, you know, potential issues in the bedroom, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
And so the doctor comes back in, and I was like, I just looked at him and I was like, you guys should get rid of these. Like, this is not okay. This is not safe. And he's like, well, what'd you do there? And I was like, I have control over your unit. It is not a safe device. You guys should get rid of these. And he's like, well, that's not a decision I make, and you should probably stop doing that right now. But like that's that story we talked on the beginning, right? And so you're the CISO of a very large hospital, and marketing gets this brilliant idea to run prescription ad medications through some kind of touchscreen kiosk in every single room. And by the time you find out that the ink has already been signed with an advertising company, and they're already, you contracted out people to install these things and drill holes in your wall, you're aware of, well, why do we have 20 new devices on the Wi-Fi? What are these things? Where did they come from? And what's going on? My asset inventory is going crazy because I don't know what they are. And it's purely because
that's the fun thing in itself, is being like, what is this thing on our network? Like when you start actually like pulling back the curtain and looking at your network, you're going, what are these devices? And then you try to go talk to people and they're like, I don't know. And, you almost sometimes have to do the scream test, which is like, shut them down, see who sends in the ticket saying that their systems aren't working. And then you have to go have that conversation. Dude, you're talking about all the, like, I've got plenty of stories on this stuff. And screens specifically, we had the same exact thing. Now, luckily, I worked at a healthcare organization where we had good, and I think it comes back to having like good relationships with the business too, right? And we had a good relationship. So they wanted to put these in. We were like, okay. And we walked through. You talked about threat modeling earlier. One of the things I started deploying out of the AppSec space I was doing with the developers was within these IT projects or these projects for the business, was running a threat modeling session of talking about what can people do with some of this stuff? How can people interact? Like, luckily they weren't putting in touchscreens. They were putting in like TVs that couldn't do anything. Right. But it's also like, you got to talk about, okay, where are they plugged into? What's, where is the actual computer system housed at, right? And are we going to a third-party service? Or we, and what happens if that third-party service gets hacked? It's all these different things that you kind of have to consider. But I know I was fortunate, and I know there's other places that's like, yeah, they just throw this stuff in place, and then it's not a problem until it becomes a problem.
It is, or compliance is not security. These things, we're SOC 2 type 2, or we are, the thing that you're buying from us is PCI compliant. Which, by the way, I really appreciate that a vulnerability scan is required in 4.0. Shout outs. It's a start.
Well, and I have a story about that one, like a big financial company, everyone's heard of. I'm not going to say who they are, and we couldn't even do like a full test on it. We had to watch someone poke around. But even still, what my pen tester watching around went like, oh, what about this? What about this? We got to a URL that gave out account information, and account information you could change through the API, like on a financial company that we were sending our stuff through, and we were like, that's kind of not a good thing. And they're like, why? I was like, because this URL is in logs for everything. If you go through a web filtering platform like Zscaler, it's going to be in there. It's in server logs. It's all like, it's findable at some point. So it's not just us that's impacted potentially. It's all your customers right now.
Yeah. There isn't like an easy way to go about it. Like you said, right? If you have good communication, if you have good policy, if you have good, and policy is only good if you have procedure, right? Like, because policies exist. It has to be demonstrated. It has to be followed. It has to be,
it has to be reasonable too, right? So putting in a policy in place that like people can't adhere to just means nothing.
Yeah. It just becomes this ever-growing thing. I know we really kind of poo-pooed on healthcare there for a little bit because
that's the state of healthcare, and a lot of it is there's a couple reasons, and there's business reasons. I've only recently learned that if you look at a healthcare organization, which is all essentially private, publicly owned stuff, it's not like government controlled like other countries. The profit margin there is really small. And so that's why a lot of these organizations have a hard time putting money into security, because they still need to, provide care for patients. And like the medical equipment is expensive, like medical providers are expensive. And you want to talk about, the security field trying to find people's hard. Like it's worse in the medical profession because you need someone that's gone through college, like 12 years of college,
Yep.
and might be specialized. So there's a lot, like the profit margins for that are really so when you think about that, it's easy to see. Now security is getting more of a priority because of all the, the attacks that it's seeing, the breaches. Change Healthcare earlier this year, it's getting a lot more visibility, and now it's actually forcing these boards and these leadership teams that they like, oh yeah, I guess we kind of have to do security. But even then, I've heard, being in the healthcare, I've heard of 3 security people for like 40,000 endpoints. Like that is a lot to deal with within a health. Yeah.
What's interesting is I feel like security, like clothing trends, comes and like goes in waves, and it has these like repeating ebb and flow cycles where we had generations of people that would essentially give out anything and trust anyone. And then we had generations of people who are like super say nothing, very kind of on top of their stuff, right? Like I'd say like people around our, age range generation are very conscious of, passwords and devices. They still have their slip ups from time to time. But my understanding is that, a lot of the breaches of today, not necessarily corporate breaches, but like victims of things are our youngest people, the people that grew up with technology, who are born with a cell phone and raised by a tablet and know nothing better, are the most vulnerable group in our society to being taken advantage of in these kinds of ways. And that is like almost now our working force of the people in our industry. Our upcoming next generation is considered the most vulnerable generation at this time, where for a long time most phishing or scamming was happening to like an elderly population. And we're starting to have more awareness in the community around that. And now we have these kids that know better. And they are the ones being most taken advantage of. And
they've been around for a lot of this manipulation, like within social media, and the whole point of YouTube is to do quick things that get people, like my kids, and I do feel like my parents at this point. It's like, why are you watching these? This isn't even funny. So like, it's hilarious. And then, the guy in the video is like pitching them some sort of thing, so my kids have come to me asking to buy some of the most off the wall crazy things because their favorite YouTuber did it.
Why?
So,
they want Prime drinks and Skibbity toilet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, that's exactly it. Right. And Mr. Beast is a new character. And apparently he's in like Zaxby's now. Like he's got like a whole meal at Zaxby's.
Yeah. It's definitely a different generation, but that's kind of, companies we're, I don't know where I'm trying to circle it around to, but like the point is that concept of security now is being applied to the real world through these generational kind of takes on things. We were very privacy conscious for a long time, and now it's click through and yes. We all know at the end of the day. Huh?
Well, I was going to say part of that is like the companies that did the long ass terms of service. I do that.
I literally just going to say that. Like we all know that this is firstborn is somewhere in the terms of service. We start clicking anyways.
Yeah.
But it's more so less of that today, and more just kind of like the blatant ignorance of it, or this kind of fallacy that it's not going to happen to me, or whatever. Even today, for the non-security people, sometimes you have to understand that phishing attacks aren't targeted. It's spray and pray. It's hit as many as we can and see what happens. Yes, maybe big organizations are targeted, but a lot of these smaller firms that are hit with some of the the financial scams and transactional things via email, that was just pure chance that somebody got it. And
well, even a 10% success rate is 1 out of 10 people, right? Or out of 100 people, it's 10 out of 100 people. Like,
it's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. That's massive.
if I was in sales, I would say, oh, if I can get 1% of the market captured, we'd have $1 million business here. It sounds like somebody in a fishing game.
Well, I would be. I'm curious, and I would imagine there's going to be studies because yes, it is a bit concerning because I've seen it with my kids. I'm trying to be optimistic that because they grew up with technology, they're going to be better at technology. That's the hope, at least. But I would be curious to see, because you're absolutely right. There's cycles that happen. We've seen the same even within security, going back to like attacking an organization, right? It used to be vulnerabilities. That for a large part, like it's still around. But it's not as big of a thing as it is more like social engineering or calling into the service desk. And I think some of that is progress, but you also, I imagine vulnerabilities at some point will come back around again as we tighten up. Like it's a cat and mouse game that we always talk about, right?
It is. It's not just a part of like the ever-changing, ever-growing landscape, and more things added to your environment as you grow as an organization, and things constantly changing and decisions being made. But yeah, it's our take on it, our theory of security and how we're going to approach these challenges. Vulnerability is probably now not as prevalent as phishing is, but then maybe once we have better, don't even get me started on the fact that I think everybody's convinced now that AI is going to pop, like the bubble is about to pop here soon, because it costs too much to operate. But when we have better, smarter systems that can help stop some of that, then maybe we'll go back to one of those other things for a little bit. But it really, at the end of the day, like, a security leader's role never stops, right? We all keep on marching on. It is our duty to stay on top of the latest and the greatest, and what's coming out, what's released, I'll tell you what, man, it's still early on, but quantum computing is really going to change a lot of things, so much so that I just learned this today, that Google has already implemented quantum-resistant algorithms for encryption in their QUIP protocol for their browsers. Like, there's been like a silent rollout of different things across major businesses, including Apple also, to start embedding quantum-resistant encryption algorithms into everyday stuff, because anything AES RSA based, as we know it, is going to be kaput. But I think we still have some time for that. If a business has a quantum computer, there's no doubt in my mind that a nation state adversary has a quantum computer. I just want to put that out in the public domain.
Well, and the U.S. is a nation state.
There's no doubt that we're a nation state just as much as a lot of people in somebody else's eye. Yeah, that is totally a fact of the matter. We do hack back. So, as we're kind of getting towards the end of my thought process and this train I've been on, it's going to keep changing. It's going to keep growing. We all know that. But realistically, where does the responsibility stop? It doesn't. It doesn't end. You're going to constantly face new requirements, new challenges along the way, especially things that you didn't expect or plan for. Businesses got to continue to make money. Boards have to continue to see return on their investments. And you just can only hope that whatever policies and procedures that you're putting out there to everybody are being followed, and that when there's something novel that's taking place, that security is part of that thought process, that you get to take a crack at it, that the consideration and budget exists too. There's a lot of little things where you're going to get people that are say, well, oh yeah, of course I do all that. We've never had a breach. We're doing great. We take security. Don't even get me started. Take security real seriously. My butt. But there's that. And then there's the people that are sympathizing, that are like, man, you're like speaking to me right now. I try to do things around here for the greater good. I try to communicate it in a manner that makes sense to those that matter. we've already met all of our compliance requirements, which was it's a must rather than a want. But I'm getting, it's hard to grow in security, and it's getting a lot of pushback because I don't like to call it a cost center. I think it's an avoidance center. We're trying not to get fined here. We're trying not to make the headline of the news
Right.
and beyond prime time. It's not what we want. So yes, all news is good news, but that's not that's not the goal here. I thought our goal was to provide widgets for the the greater good.
Yeah.
I want to rapid fire with you some ways we'd hack McDonald's. You ready for that?
Okay.
Let's do it. All right. So I'm gonna start with Wi-Fi.
So am I just supposed to name an attack vector? APIs.
Okay. Okay. All right. Touch kiosks, self-service touch kiosks.
Well, I'm just going to do the top one right now, which is calling the service desk and having an admin account.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right. Well, if you're going down the phone route and getting like a password reset or Okta reset, I'm gonna go with phishing emails.
There you go. Okay. I guess we're gonna have to scan for vulnerabilities. We're getting
public facing
stuff, looking for
Okay, I'm gonna go with badge cloning at headquarters.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with tailgating. I'm just gonna tailgate. Right, I don't know how good. I feel like McDonald's. You would hope McDonald's would be a really good one for tailgating, but you never know.
Now this is where we start getting creative. I'm gonna go with typo squatting.
Ooh, that's
for domains, lookalikes, and stuff like that. Especially given the Cyrillic alphabet is now valid.
Yep.
Or not alphabet, the Cyrillic characters. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Typo squatting. I guess I would. I guess you could do that. NPM or what package typo squatting. Yeah.
So supply chain, like
dependency confusion. You always got to go for the supply chain. Yeah,
and SBOM, like dependencies and hitting like repositories upstream. That's a great one to backdoor an application.
Yeah, I might get some other organizations along with.
All right. HR North Korean.
Oh damn! You could wait. So you're gonna go to North Korea, become a North Korean citizen, and then just apply for a job at McDonald's?
I'm gonna be insider threat at broad, but more specifically hired insider threat.
There you go. Get a job at corporate. Absolutely. Well. So in that hypothetical thing, how well funded am I? Because I'm just going to find an engineer that's pissed off about working at McDonald's, and I'm going to offer him $1 million.
Yeah, that's related. So disgruntled, and blackmailable, right? Financial, stuff like that.
Find someone with a gambling problem.
Yeah, somebody with gambling. I'm just never going to get a clearance with that. Okay. How about this? What is it? I'm trying to frame it, but it's basically like laptop or device theft.
So you're gonna track someone down and steal something out of their car?
Yeah, I feel like it's so often that I left a laptop in my passenger seat and I came back and my window was smashed. Well, what did you have on your laptop? Source code, corporate emails. What was your hard drive encrypted? I don't know. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Do you have another one?
The point is this now suddenly it's no longer just the firewall. Now suddenly it's no longer just a computer that you can put EDR on. It is seriously so much more, and it's getting more challenging. I had a buddy of mine who has a deepfake startup meant for training purposes, send me an audio sample of myself talking about how I hate my favorite food, which is a total lie because I'm not going to say what my favorite food is, but I genuinely love my favorite food. And he sent me a voice of myself saying how I hate my favorite food. And he sampled entirely off of my YouTube account. Which there's hours and hours of content of me talking at conferences, which is good enough to create an audio sample. And I was like, oh, we're in trouble. For this recently hit Ferrari. The CEO of Ferrari was deepfaked in a call to another executive to request a financial transaction. And the way they thwarted it was that the executive, who had just recently had a conversation with the CEO in person, shared a book recommendation. And when the executive thought that he sounded a little bit weird on the phone from his spoofed number, of course, he asked him, "Hey, what was that book you recommended to me earlier today? I really want to go buy a copy of it."
Yeah.
And that, bellissimo.
Yeah.
Okay? That's all I can say is clever. But yeah,
Well, and sometimes some of the simple defenses can make a huge impact, especially like something in that case. And being cool. Well, we're out of time, man. This was a great conversation. We'll have to do this again, where we just kind of get on and just kind of riff about a topic that's on Mr. Singer's head. I am gonna go to AI, by the way, and have it come up with some sort of pun for the podcast with your last name, Singer, like something like singing with Singer, singing security with Singer.
Put me to your favorite Taylor Swift song.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And I'm on board.
Cool. All right, man.
It's been a pleasure.
Yep. Likewise. See ya.
Thank you.